Good afternoon and welcome to Midweek on CKCU 93.1. I'm your host, Katrina Squazzin. On most days, the Ottawa Public Library is a quiet place, but on Saturday, the atmosphere was much different. Instead of taking out a book and flipping through the pages, readers had the chance to talk with human books. The Human Library gave people a chance to sit down with a stranger for 20 minutes and ask them about their lives. One of those books was William Lau. Lau is a specialist in the traditional Chinese theater called Peking opera. Lau was a part of the first Human Library that was held 4 years ago. He said he was excited to be asked back for another year.
Oh, I enjoy it. The first time it was so fabulous. I get to speak to people and they're very curious about my work and how I get into the opera. Time is very precious. They spend 20 minutes of their life speaking to me. I really value that and get to kind of have a communication with them one-on-one is wonderful.
Lau said that he enjoys sharing his story and love of the theater. He didn't discover his passion for performing until he was in Hawaii on a University Foundation grant. The first Human Library was held in Denmark in 2000. A group of people launched the project to promote talk about anti-violence after their friend was stabbed. Flash forward 15 years later, and over 30 countries have adopted the Human Library. But until next year, the human books are being put back on the shelf. Katrina Squazzin, Ottawa.
A new study published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal says 15 to 20% of Canadians meet the criteria for having an alcohol disorder. Midweek's Katrina Squazzin spoke with Roderick Phillips, history professor at Carleton University, to learn more about Canada's drinking past.
Has Canada always had a history of drinking a lot, would you say?
I think in the very early days of colonization, many of the settlers had a reputation for being heavy drinkers. And of course, many of the fur traders and so on who were isolated from their communities for a long period of time were often thought to be very heavy drinkers. So in the very early days, yes, there were a lot of comments about the very heavy drinking. But overall, I don't think Canadians could be regarded as very heavy drinkers. If you look at them within the broader context of Western society, of European settled nations or Europe itself, no, they're not heavy drinkers or light drinkers. They sort of fall in the middle.
Based on the study, do you think that there is need for concern based on the findings?
I think there's always need for concern about alcohol. I mean, quite obviously, alcohol is implicated in a lot of problems, traffic deaths and injuries. It's associated with family violence. It's associated with inability to function effectively. But I think it's too easy to find levels of consumption and declare that they're problematic. They may be problematic for some people. They may not be problematic for other people. And it's much more complicated to find a nuanced way of describing alcohol problems and the level of alcohol consumption at which these problems start.
That was Midweek's Katrina Squazzin speaking with Roderick Phillips, professor of the Social History of Alcohol course at Carleton University.
Wine and beer may soon be available to buy in your local supermarket. Katrina Squazzin has been following this story. Katrina, what do we know about this plan so far?
Even though the plan is not definite and it still has to be proposed as part of the spring budget, it has already caused quite a stir. The Toronto Star is the first to report this plan by the Liberal government. Reports show that Queen's Park may be planning to liberalize sales of wine and beer. Right now, the beer store is a privately owned retail chain that is owned by 3 major brewers: Molson Coors, Anheuser-Busch, which owns Labatt, and Sapporo. They're the only outlet that are allowed to sell beer outside of small brewery shops. The LCBO would still retain its monopoly on selling spirits, but reports say that the government will auction off licenses to sell beer and wine in about 300 supermarkets across Ontario. The beer store will also have to pay an annual franchise fee of up to $100 million.
Thanks, Katrina. That was Midweek's Katrina Squazzin.